Hey, how's it going?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good.
You've got a beautiful record, a heartbreaking record, a gorgeous. I think there's a lot of adjectives that can be applied to this. It's a record that I don't know if I should compliment for its beauty because it's there's so much, not sadness, I think is the right word, but it's definitely, you're not writing a happy-go-lucky record, and it's still a beautiful record. Before we get into that, though, I got to ask that title. I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're the home of the Lebowski Fest, which I know has played a few times out in LA too. But Stranger in the Alps, that's a Lebowski reference, right?
It is. It is indeed.
Nicely done. Is that just because
Thanks.
that's the fun of the edit? Was there any other story behind that?
Not really. I just thought it was kind of poetic on accident. I mean, maybe the person who had to edit it had that in mind, but I just thought it was such an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of things that they could have chosen to replace that, but yeah, I just thought it was cool.
Somebody was high-fiving the other person in the editing booth that day.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know what it is. Well, getting into this record, it's such a great record and a hell of a debut, a way to introduce yourself. Although I know that we were kind of familiar with you, based off of the first single and EP to begin with. There's a few years in between, and is it that you just took your time to wait to get everything in order for the actual release, or were you still writing on it this whole time?
It's just that I think the 7-inch I did with Ryan Adams kind of happened on accident. It happened as I was planning on making a full-length album, and then people liked it, and then I started getting tours because of it. And so I took a lot of breaks in the recording process because of tours, which was really cool, but it did take forever.
And I've heard you say a few things about this, though, about these songs that, some of them have been around for a few years now because of that, right?
Yeah, totally. Because of the 7-inch dragging everything out as far as my full length as well, I got to finish songs that would never have been on the record otherwise, kind of in the final hour of making it. So yeah, that was a cool part. But then, yeah, some of them I've had since before I recorded with Ryan. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, well, that's kind of an interesting thing about it being your debut and for having these songs around because, every one of your songs, I think the most special thing about them is they are so specific. You hear some of those pop doctor writers talk about, if you want to get to the masses, you got to write broad and everything, and I've never believed that. A lot of my favorite songs are very specific to the artist, but when this is your debut and some of these songs, this is the introduction to for a lot of people, but these are little moments that happen to you. I don't know what 5-10 years ago. Like, is that connection still there? Is that for you?
Yeah, I actually feel I feel the opposite of what you just said about pop songwriters. Like I agree with you. I always feel like some of the most specific songs are actually kind of the most universal. So yeah, I think that applies to my older songs as well. For me, like even if they are really specific and I'm not having those experiences anymore, I still like things repeat themselves and I connect in different ways than I thought I would. I feel like I think different things about who I was at those times, which is the only thing that changes my experience with older songs, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm like, oh wow, like why was I so obsessed with that person? Like they sucked, like that. Those are the only things that change is like a perspective, basically.
I've heard a lot of songwriters talk about how when you look back at your catalog, it's almost like looking back at the old yearbook photos. And, in that sense, it's almost like you walking up for the first time, but instead of offering a picture of you, a current day picture, it's almost that you're holding over. It's like, well, this was me, a few years ago. And
totally, it's gonna be interesting to make a second record because this kind of feels like catching people up on my life.
Yeah.
And then a second record will be, probably like all songs that were written in the same 6 months.
Right.
So yeah, so interesting.
Well, as far as those lyrics go, you have an amazing knack for poetry. I mean, honestly, it's some of the most engaging lyrics. And I say this coming from a person who's not usually, I'm one of the people who finds rhythm and melody long before I find the lyrics, but yours are so engaging that you can't not pay attention to them. Where does that poetry bone come from for you?
I think it's what I gravitate toward. I'm the opposite. It's what I gravitate towards the most are lyrics. I love melodies, and there's nothing better than perfect combination of a great melody and great lyrics. But I think, I actually like a lot of songs that are really just monotonous melodies that are a story, like, like Leonard Cohen songs are like that, where like it kind of drags out over, 10 minutes. And it's just the same verse over and over, but the lyrics are so compelling you can't help but pay attention. So I think it's just what I consumed always. My mom listened to a lot of singer-songwriter music, and then when I grew up, I kind of gravitated towards like contemporary singer-songwriters, and kind of found that people were still doing that. It wasn't just only music that my parents listened to. So yeah, I think it's just what I consumed.
Did you always kind of know that this was what you were going to try to make your profession?
I guess, yeah. It sounds kind of corny, but I don't remember fantasizing about doing another thing. I think I don't have like a realistic set of goals for myself. I always was like, I'm going to be a musician. I like totally was kind of I didn't really pay attention in school. I was kind of like pretty convinced that I was going to do music always, whether based in reality or not. So yeah, wouldn't advise it, but yeah, I don't remember wanting to do anything else.
Was there a moment when you could actually remember that you took the serious jump, that you kind of went all in on it? I mean, knowing is one thing. Actually performing that trick is sort of another thing.
I think I always did. Like, I think I can point to a lot of times where I did that, but there wasn't really any fear attached to it. I think the most fearful I ever was, which is really actually wasn't a very pronounced feeling, but I when I was graduating high school, my mom knew that I wanted to be a musician, but she was like, just apply to one school, just do one, so that you have the option if you freak out. And I applied and got into Berklee School of Music, and it was like, and I had just gone to 4 years of like a music magnet high school. So I was like, do I do this for another 4 years, or do I just jump in? And my mom and I looked at each other and we're like, I can take a year off. Worst case scenario, I just apply to school again.
Yeah. So
I think that was the freakiest time. I also kind of sat around it and did nothing for like 6 years after I graduated high school. Or 6 years, 6 months. Yeah, 6 years. That'd be amazing.
Right. No, that's what I was laughing at, because when someone says I'm going to take the year off, it usually means that I'm just going to sit there. I'm just not going to do
Exactly. I feel like I kind of lazed around for 6 months and was like, what am I doing? And then it kind of started picking up, and I got my confidence back. I was like, all right, I'm playing shows, I'm recording, this feels good. And then I met Ryan a year after I graduated high school. So
wow.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. What timing. And at some point in there, I read that you ended up in an iPhone commercial too, right? I
did. That was kind of the end of my lazing around, I think.
Well, how did that come about? Because what an opportunity, especially as, at the moment, you're sort of an unknown.
Yeah, someone just known me from somewhere.
Yeah. So you were known. You were known. That was it. You weren't an unknown.
Yeah,
you were known.
A little bit. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I'm glad personally that everything has happened the way it's happened, because, again, this record is just so interesting to listen to, and I've loved every moment of it. So,
thanks so much.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll see you around these parts. I'm in Louisville at some point, and I'm guessing you're probably going to be on tour nonstop for the next 20 years. So one of these days.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. It was nice talking with you, Phoebe.
Yeah, great to talk to you.
All right. Bye.
All right.